Sam. On February 21st, we're going to have Mars and Saturn joined in Scorpio, where they're going to be, for the most part, between then and early September. It's going to be a pretty long transit where Mars and Saturn, for the most part, are going to be in Scorpio. And I want to talk about what this is going to mean for everyone. We've had Saturn in Scorpio since the end of 2014, and the comparison or the analogy for Saturn in Scorpio is frozen water. It's like ice, because Scorpio is fixed water. It's where we're resisting some emotional transformation. Usually Scorpio, there's this emotional resistance to things that are scary. For example, I know everybody wants to talk about Scorpio as a sign of emotional transformation, and especially in Western astrology, there's a lot of kind of sex, death, rebirth, Scorpio baby, I'm tough and all. But actually, it's really a sign of vulnerability, where we first are scared of something that's going to be emotionally painful and we resist it. So this is the nature, and I'm not talking about Scorpios. So if you're a Scorpio, I'm not talking about you as a Scorpio. Again, I got to say this a lot too, because people think I'm talking about them. I'm not. It's a sign. We all have Scorpio somewhere. It's a quality of life. We've all been resisting something. That's the point. Since the end of 2014, there's been this emotional resistance to something that we're sort of terrified of, because we've had Saturn in Scorpio, and we've been kind of trying to hold something together that we know is quite vulnerable, that we need to sort of let go of, but we're sort of scared to let go of it. So Saturn in Scorpio tends to create this sort of complex, and when I use the analogy of ice, Saturn is very much about making something hard on the surface. This kind of hard surface to protect us, like the hard shell of a turtle, or the shell of a crab, or the skin of a crocodile, which is the sign that Saturn rules, Capricorn. And so its influence on the fixed water of Scorpio is to create like this thick ice that kind of resisting the emotional change and transformation. Now, of course, the greatness of any planets in Scorpio, or people who have Scorpio ascendant, is once they get beyond the resistance and the control, the diabolical tendency to want to control situations because of this fear of letting go, because of this resistance. If people have a lot of planets in Scorpio, or Scorpio ascendant, Scorpio moon, or all of us to some extent, then the greatness is that there's a lot of emotional stability and emotional courage and emotional transformation. But it's initially where we first resist transformation, because we want to keep things the way they are. We all are comfortable with something. We have a comfort zone, especially an emotional comfort zone, and we resist the fear of that, of what's beyond that. And so we try to control things. So the confluence of Saturn's desire for control of tangible forms, tangible structures, and Scorpio's desire for emotional control is really well understood with this concept of like ice on the surface of a lake, like a frozen lake. So that's been happening since the end of 2014. Now bring Mars in there, and what do you think happens? Well, Mars is fiery, but Mars isn't the fire of, let's say, the sun, which, to use an analogy, a lake will freeze in the winter. In the winter months, lakes freeze. They get a couple, feet of thick ice, and then gradually, as the Earth and the tilt of the Earth starts to change, the warmth of the sun starts to gradually thaw that ice. So the sun is a gradual thaw. The sun brings a gradual warmth, right? Something else can happen. You can throw a hand grenade on the frozen lake, and that's going to break the ice too. This is more of a Mars thing. You can explode a bomb on the surface of the frozen lake, and that will also bust the surface of the frozen lake. And this is the nature of Mars. This is a way to understand the difference between the sun and Mars. The sun is a gradual warming, which feels warm. It feels, protective, and it's based on, like, the sun in your life is that enduring vision, that enduring warmth that permeates your whole life, and that gives you courage and gives you vision to stay consistent and stay the course. That's what the sun is. That's the quality of fire related to the sun. It's consistent fire. Mars is that burst of energy in the moment that says, I need to do this, and where your energy is focused in the moment, going somewhere. And the suddenness of Mars as a transformational planet is in this quality of, like, exploding something, like a grenade going off, or hitting something, or breaking something, or moving, or doing something in the moment that's very sudden. So I want you to think about that analogy of Mars going into Scorpio, joining the sun, joining Saturn, and kind of exploding a grenade in this area of life that you've been trying to control for the last year, maybe almost year and a half, since November of 2014. Okay, so November of last year was a year, so it's been about a year and 4 months or so. Think about that time and some vulnerability. And the specifics of the vulnerability has to do with your ascendant. For Aries, it's actually 8th house stuff. Taurus, it's 7th house stuff. Gemini, 6th house stuff. Cancer, 5th house stuff. So each one of the signs, wherever Scorpio falls from your ascending sign, shows that area where Saturn has been sort of camped out. Like for me as a Gemini, it's the 6th house, which is, things that have to do with my daily energy and my health routines and my, showing up to face life's hardships and, problems, just in general, and kind of resisting getting down. I'm looking around my apartment. It needs to be cleaned. I need to clean up more. I need to, really handle and manage a lot of things. And in fact, I have been managing a lot of things. You may have noticed I haven't been doing as many videos lately, especially the last few months. Behind the scenes, there's all kinds of things going on. I've been doing so many things that's putting not just my business, but other things in my life in mainly things that have to do with, like, 6th house, like finances and structures and things that I just have let go for a long time because I don't particularly enjoy it. Like setting up things with my business that's much better for tax reasons, and things with, just other things in my life, just logistics that they're really not fun, but they need to be done. So Saturn going through my 6th house is making me do those things and not spending as much time on things that are just kind of fun because I feel like doing them, for example. So wherever that sign of Scorpio is, relative to your ascending sign, you've had Saturn camped out there saying, no matter what, you can't avoid this thing. So the stress and pressure of getting that thing handled has been important since the end of last year, and hopefully you've been paying attention to that and really, having to show up and focus on it, since then. Of course, anyone who has any planets in Scorpio, it's also going to be important. Like if you have the sun there, the moon there, any planet in Scorpio. Of course, the ascending sign, any people who have Scorpio ascendant, you've had Saturn in your 1st house since then. If the moon is there, again, that's another thing, the sun there, any planet there. So Mars is going to come and blow that thing up. So hopefully you've been putting attention on it. You've been putting attention on it, and rather than just kind of avoiding it out of this fear, this kind of trembling fear. So when Mars comes and blows that energy up, it's going to, like, crack open that thick ice, which of course then allows you to go deep down into that water. Think about it metaphorically. One of the reasons why this is wherever Scorpio is in anyone's chart, it's where we have resistance to something. We just it kind of scares us a little bit. We kind of don't like it so much often. It kind of scares us a little bit, but we also can be very drawn to it. Not all the time, but at least the negative, at least the difficult part of Scorpio has that quality. But underneath it all, there's enormous growth and enormous depth and enormous transformation and enormous strength that comes from facing that area of life. So underneath it all, and this is true with any Mars-Saturn conjunctions, we make a lot of progress in that area of life when Saturn and Mars are joined. Now, it tends to benefit Mars more because Saturn lends a very steady hand to Mars energy. You can see this just by the fact that Mars is exalted in Saturn's sign. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Saturn is debilitated in Mars' sign. So it doesn't benefit Saturn so much. Right? Because Saturn likes that structure. Saturn says, okay, I got things under control. Mars comes and says, oh, really? Boom. Boom. Blows it up. Right? So, but again, when Mars blows something up and Saturn is there, rather than just let the thing blow up, Saturn has already been putting attention there. So when it blows up, there's already a lot of focused energy there. Again, this is just in general with Mars and Saturn, but in Scorpio, Mars also has a lot of power because he's the ruler of Scorpio. So you want to understand that things getting blown open now a little bit. Look by this time next week, after February 21st, start looking at politics and the world and start seeing things now getting serious, things getting blown open more, and see how we handle it, see how we rise to the occasion, see how much emotional integrity and depth and strength is there, and the courage to go into our vulnerabilities, because that's why Mars is the ruler of Scorpio. Like everything in astrology, everything is good. There is no ultimately negative outcome to anything. Certain things are more challenging because of mainly the nature of the ruler. So the planets that the signs that Mars and Saturn rule are naturally just more stressful because they're stressful energies. We have to face our fears and our anger and our desire for our like willfulness with those energies. That's why there's a little more stress involved. But with Mars going into Scorpio and breaking up that icy area of life that you've been trying to control since the end of last year, it can also lead you to the enormous depth and power underneath. And the real key is to be more disciplined. And I know this one. I know I've been looking around, and this week I'm going to get very disciplined. I've already scheduled a truck to come and carry away I don't really even have a lot of stuff. I live in a small apartment, so I can't really accumulate too many things, but it's funny how things still do accumulate. And I'm just, and like here in the city, I have to have a truck come, and then they'll take out like a dumpster full of stuff for $100, So I already have a truck coming on Wednesday to get some stuff out, throw away some things. It's a good time to purge, throw away some things. For me, because it's sixth house stuff, that's actually part of it. I've been working really hard behind the scenes also laying the framework and the foundation for the other great things that I need to be doing that I've been resisting for years because I just don't really enjoy it that much. Many of them have to do with things like I incorporated in my business, which I should have done years ago, just because it makes much more sense to have incorporation just for my tax purposes. And again, I've been paying so much more in taxes because I haven't incorporated in the last, so ultimately it's going to be very beneficial, but I just haven't felt like doing it. The whole thing actually has always kind of scared me a little bit. I don't like legal stuff, and it's a real pain in the neck because once you do legal stuff like that, you're constantly bombarded with these letters. You must register with this thing and register with here and do that and here and that, or else pay this enormous fine, and it's just it's stuff I don't feel like doing or thinking about. So I hired an accountant, to do it. So. But that, not only that, but as many of you know, I finished my book. I've recently finished the book finally. And, again, it's been something that I loved writing the book. Finishing it is so much. In part, I could have kept editing it forever, but I just had to stop. I had to get it done, get it finished. So I knew since the end of last year that I had 3 or 4 big things that I had to focus on, and there are a few others too. But these things have required so much attention, and not really fun stuff. I mean, I felt like going to India. I felt like traveling. Usually around the end of the year, I might make a big trip. I'm getting ready to take a trip, and I think one of the big things that's going to happen for me when Mars, and I can already feel it, when Mars goes into Scorpio and blows that up, for me, it's going to be like okay, I need to relax somewhere, because these last few months, it's been a winter of working hard for me. I've had Saturn in the 6th, and I could have resisted the work, and instead, but I would have felt the pressure. See, because I feel the pressure of Saturn going, no, you can't run away from this. You have to do this. You have to do this. And luckily for me, my Saturn is strong. So Saturn always really makes me, work hard when I need to work hard. It's not necessarily going to be bad. That's the point. If you've been putting in the work where you need to put in the work, this is going to really help to liberate a certain stress that you've maybe been creating because of this fear. And again, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. There really has been nothing. There's nothing to be stressed out about. Like I said, it's just something that I like on a personal level. It's just something that I've resisted because I don't like it. It actually fills me with a little bit of fear, all this legal stuff. And it's not because I do anything illegal. I'm so honest with taxes and stuff because I don't want any attention for that sort of stuff. So I wind up overpaying and doing all this other, it's just because I don't like it. But actually showing up and facing those things, if you've been facing these areas of life or if you've been facing them, then this nature of Mars is going to come in and kind of blow open some positive energy for you to really sink into. It's also been good. I'll just say, sort of personally, because I didn't travel so much and I didn't do other things that I might have done. It's been good to just align myself and say, for the next 3 months or so, which I said this at the end of last year, I'm just going to stay here, and I got 2 or 3 things that require a lot of attention, and I'm just going to focus on it. Might not be, the fun things to do, but it's nice to just dedicate your headspace to doing that thing. And that's been one of the things that people should have been doing. A lot of people got readings from me at the end of last year when I was talking about these changes, and it's one of the things I said. You need to just focus and dedicate yourself to doing these things so that when Mars goes into Scorpio, you'll be ready, and you'll have that strong foundation already laid. So, but it's going to make it interesting, because these things that you've been trying to control, you'll realize you don't have the control. So I do expect some surprises. I'm not necessarily saying with the taxes and the business, but like for instance, with me, it could be something like health, making sure that my health is good, which I've been really getting back in that too, because that's also the 6th house. When we don't manage those difficult things in life, which includes things like diet, then when you get 2 malefics in a certain area, it can show in the health problems. I'm very healthy, mainly because I also eat very healthy, and I'm very healthy with generally exercising well and not indulging. But certain areas for me is like teeth, which my teeth are doing well, but also like back, and just getting a little bit older. It's a little harder to do as vigorous of yoga that as I used to do and things. But in general, I'm looking out for those things because those are 6th house things. So in your chart, you want to see wherever Scorpio is. Notice where you've been resisting something. Like if you're Leo, it's been the 4th house. And again, look at the nature of your Saturn. Is your Saturn weak? If your Saturn is weak, then wherever this house falls as well, you may have been trying to just kind of avoid it, but there's this kind of trembling. And if you haven't been facing those things, that the sign of Scorpio and the house where Scorpio falls especially, if you haven't been facing those things, because let's say that Saturn in your natal chart is weak, then get ready for like a surprise, a bomb. When I was doing those readings, I probably did about 50 or 60 of those readings. They were readings for 2016 where I talked about Jupiter, Rahu, and Leo, Rahu changing signs, Saturn, Mars conjunction. And I talked about this thing that's going on from the end of February until early September, for the most part. It's remarkable how, how many people, had to, I could see, like, if their Saturn wasn't strong, I would make sure to double down and say, look, your Saturn is weak, so you're probably really trying to avoid a lot of these areas of life. So you want to really try to get real and practical about this, because when Mars comes, he's going to blow that thing up. And that thing you've been trying to control, you're not going to be able to control it as well anymore. That veneer of that ice that feels like you can walk across that frozen lake forever in January. Come February, that ice starts to melt. Come March, if you're not off that ice, you're sunk. You're in the water. So again, that's the gradual warming of the sun. But you can be walking across that ice in February, and there can be a fault line that you don't see, and the ice cracks anyway, and you don't realize it, or something can happen and sort of blow up the ice. As someone who grew up with winters where we would go skating and whatnot, sometimes the ice would crack, and you have to be careful. So this is going to be an important metaphor for the next several months, and the real power is that Mars is going to be there, giving the discipline and the courage to really face whatever comes up, because Mars will be in Scorpio, and it'll be guided by the awareness of consequences that only comes from Saturn. When Saturn joins Mars, it joins this impulsive action with the awareness of the consequences that come as a result. The problem with Mars is when we're indiscriminate and we destroy things and we don't consider the consequences, we don't consider how we're going to feel later, we don't learn from our mistakes, we just do it over and over again. So when Mars and Saturn interact, like through a conjunction, Mars benefits by the hard lessons of Saturn, and Saturn doesn't. Again, Saturn likes that ice. He likes the structure. Mars comes and blows it up, and it's like, whoa, I thought I had control. I thought I was managing this, and I'm not. So get ready for some surprises, and also get ready, and always remember, no matter what, you're strong enough to handle them. You always do. So astrology shouldn't compel you into some irrational, oh my God, what's it mean? It means you're going to deal with stuff. You've always dealt with stuff. You wind up handling it. People always, don't go off the deep end. Sometimes people, oh, I'm so scared. What do I do? What do I do? You've dealt with this before in your life. You've had Mars-Saturn conjunctions many times in your life. You've had Scorpio. You've dealt with it all your life before. This is just this version of it, and it's going to be for a while. It's quite a formidable and long transit. This is why I'm talking about it, because it's not just going to pass like it usually does. We're going to have them both go retrograde. Mars is going to go up, and then he's going to stop in Scorpio. Then he's going to go retrograde. He'll poke his head back in the end of Libra for, I don't remember, I think it's about a week, maybe a week and a half or 10 days. Then he goes back into Scorpio again, and he doesn't clear that until September, until I think it's September 9th, I think, or September 11th, September 10th or something. So that's going to be it's a long transit. It's not just Mars-Saturn joined. It's Mars-Saturn joined for, almost 7 months, 6.5 months. And it's in Scorpio, which is ruled by Mars, so it gives a lot of that integrity of emotional courage. So Scorpio is that sign where we're trying to transform our emotional state, transform our heart, and not be so worried about the things we can't control, not be so, trying to, avoid, unpleasantness and try to, win and, get into emotional battles because we're afraid that something that we love or something that we want is going to be taken from us or something like that. This is the diabolical quality of Scorpio that leads to all of the negative qualities of Scorpio. And all the signs have negative and difficult qualities. That's the one of Scorpio. So, again, Saturn, who has been there since the end of last year, has said, okay, well, I know how to handle this. We'll just freeze the surface so none of that stuff underneath can get me. So, okay, I'm handling it. I'm managing it. See, I'm walking across that emotional water. I'm okay. I'm not sinking. But again, when we freeze something, when we make that icy exterior, it's this illusion that everything is safe, kind of like Earth. You know, we think, oh, I'm safe, I'm living on Earth, but the Earth is a living thing. I live in San Francisco, where sometimes the Earth starts shaking. So the Earth nothing is certain. So we're going to revisit that concept February 21st, 22nd. So, you know, it takes a few days, especially as Mars and Saturn get closer. Like, for instance, you know, Mars is going to go up to about, he goes up to about, let me see how many degrees. Yeah, Mars turns retrograde at about 14. So in the end of April, so, you know, Mars is going to start to slow down. So even in 2 months, Mars has only gone about halfway into Scorpio because he starts to slow down, called stationary retrograde. So he turns retrograde at about 14, and then he goes back. So this is going to be going for months, like I said. And then, yeah, he's actually going to be in Libra for, yeah, it's about a month, a little more than a month. So let me just look here. It's middle of June. Yeah, middle of June till the middle of July. So it's about a month of that time that he's in Libra, and then he leaves on like September the 10th. So for about a month of that, he'll be back in Libra, like 1 degree. But again, even then, that's you know, it's kind of tricky to say as well, because he's going to hover in between Libra and Scorpio, like the last degree of. He'll be hovering between the last degree of Scorpio, the last degree of Libra and the first degree of Scorpio for a month. This is why I said, this is sidereal, obviously, but this is why I hardly even really consider that it's in Libra, but it's important to understand. What happens is Mars is he'll go back as he's going retrograde, and then he goes back to like, he's starting to slow down, really slow again, and he slows down, and then he goes back to like 29 of Libra, and then he stops. So all of that, he does this for about a month. So he's covering like 1 degree, let's say 2 degrees, for a month. This is what happens when the planets station, when they go stationary, direct, and retrograde. I did a video about it a couple weeks ago, where I talked about the planets when they go stationary, direct, or retrograde. So Mars is going to station retrograde at 1 degree Scorpio, 29 degrees Libra for like a month. So that's why I said it's mainly Scorpio, because it's like 1 degree of Libra, where it's then just really, it's weak when it's at those really variable degrees, called Sandhi. At that transition point, the energy is also very kind of unsettled, very unsettling. So it's almost kind of like, I don't want to say worse, because I don't want to just put a value judgment on it, but it's also more uncertain and restless at that 1 degree. It's almost better that it's still in Scorpio. So that retrograde, he kind of stops and goes stationary retrograde for a month, from like 1 degree Scorpio to 29 Libra. So there will be more videos about that as it comes, but you should know that there's a big Mars-Saturn event. It's going to be a big part of this year, big part of 2016. That's why in those mini readings that I did for 2016, this was one of the major things. And my 2016 forecast, this is one of the major things that I discussed. And by the way, if you haven't got the 2016 forecast yet, you really should. Even though it's February, we've only had one really major event from the 2016 forecast, and that's Rahu changing signs. There's still like 9 more events that I analyze for the year about your sign that's in the forecast. And by the way, it's really worth it. It's very good to hear me talk about all of these different things just for your sign, because all these things are different for each one of the signs. And in the 2016 forecast, I drill down into the exact specifics of the way it affects each ascending sign, based on where these events take place. So anyway, let me know how this works for you and be in touch.